Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even when you knew you were completely alone? My Aunt Lorna did, and she believed she was being haunted by a spirit of greed. I'm Janus, and this is her story. Aunt Lorna was a talented seamstress. For many years, she worked for a school, managing and repairing the graduation gowns that were rented out each year. The sewing shop was her sanctuary, a place filled with the hum of her machine and the scent of fresh fabric. But the strange thing that happened to her there had nothing to do with graduation gowns. It all started with an old vintage dress, a piece that had once belonged to a man who had long since passed away. Her friend, Olga, brought it to her. The fabric was exquisite, a beautiful, high-quality material that you just don't see anymore. Olga, ever the practical one, saw its potential. "There's no harm in reusing it, right?" she'd said, her eyes sparkling with ideas. She envisioned turning the old dress into a stylish romper for herself and using the leftover fabric to create a comfortable pair of shorts for lounging at home. It was a simple alteration job, and Aunt Lorna, seeing a chance to make some easy money, happily accepted. As she took the dress from Olga, she couldn't help but make a little joke. "Better hope the spirit of Mr. Homer doesn't come back to haunt me for this," she chuckled. Olga laughed along with her. Mr. Homer was Olga's uncle, the previous owner of the dress. He had been an old bachelor, a man known for his quiet and gentle nature. But he was also known for being incredibly particular about his belongings. He cherished his things, and everyone in the family knew not to mess with them. Little did Aunt Lorna know, her joke was about to become a chilling reality. The next day, Aunt Lorna laid the dress out on her large cutting table. The fabric felt cool and smooth under her fingers. She picked up her sharpest pair of shears, the steel glinting under the workshop lights. As she made the first cut, a clean slice through the vintage material, she felt it. A strange, fleeting sensation, like a soft breath or a light tap brushing against her ear. She froze, her hand still holding the scissors. She quickly turned her head, scanning the empty room. Nothing. No one was there. The only sound was the faint buzzing of the overhead fluorescent lights. "Just my imagination," she muttered to herself, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. She turned back to the dress, determined to focus on her work. She measured the fabric for the romper, marking the lines with her tailor's chalk. As she reached for her shears again, a deafening crash shattered the silence. A heavy, massive roll of denim, one that had been sitting securely on a high shelf for months, had fallen to the floor. It hit the concrete with a loud, resounding thud that echoed through the entire shop. Aunt Lorna jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. Her eyes darted to the shelf. There was no wind. The windows were closed. The ground hadn't shaken. There was absolutely no logical reason for that heavy roll to have fallen. It was wedged in so tightly, it would have taken a deliberate, forceful push to dislodge it. Her heart began to pound against her ribs like a drum. A cold sweat prickled her skin. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that Mr. Homer had been dead for years. The memory of his quiet, possessive nature came rushing back to her. Swallowing hard, she whispered into the empty air, her voice trembling slightly. "Please, Mr. Homer, don't scare me. I'm just doing my job." She stood perfectly still, listening, her ears straining for any sound. The silence that answered was heavier, more profound than before. She waited a few seconds, her breath held tight in her chest. Then, she saw it. Out of the corner of her eye, a flicker of movement. A figure, a man dressed all in white, walked silently past the end of her sewing table. It was a fleeting glimpse, almost like a trick of the light, but she saw it. A tall, spectral shape, moving with an unnatural grace. Panic seized her. This was no longer her imagination. This was real. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. I won't touch your dress anymore." But she couldn't just leave it. She had a commitment to Olga, and besides, the dress was now cut. She had to at least repair the seam she had opened. With trembling hands, she carried the pieces over to her sewing machine. As she sat down and began to guide the fabric under the needle, the feeling of being watched intensified. It was a heavy, oppressive presence, so close she could almost feel its breath on the back of her neck. She could feel someone standing right behind her chair, their gaze fixed on her every move. The fine hairs on her arms and the back of her neck stood straight up. A primal fear, cold and sharp, gripped her. She didn't dare turn around. She just kept her eyes locked on the needle, her foot pressing the pedal. Under her breath, she began to pray, repeating the words like a mantra. "I'm sorry, Mr. Homer. I mean no harm. I'm just fixing it, please." The hum of the sewing machine seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Every stitch felt like an eternity. Finally, the seam was closed. Her hands shook as she cut the thread. With a sense of desperate urgency, she quickly folded the dress. She didn't bother to press it or present it nicely. She just wanted it out of her sight. She folded it as carefully as her trembling fingers would allow, slipped it into a clear plastic bag, and sealed it shut. She then tucked the bag away in a corner, far from her workstation, as if putting it out of sight would make the presence in the room disappear. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of anxiety. Every creak of the building, every shadow, sent a new jolt of fear through her. That night, Aunt Lorna couldn't find peace. Sleep offered no escape. She dreamed she was back in the sewing shop, but it was dark and cold. Mr. Homer was standing there, right in front of her. He looked exactly as she remembered him, but his gentle demeanor was gone. He stood with his hands on his hips, one eyebrow raised in a look of pure indignation. He stared at her, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, his face a mask of anger and offense. He didn't say a word, but his silent fury was more terrifying than any scream. Aunt Lorna woke up with a gasp, drenched in a cold sweat, her heart hammering against her chest. The dream had felt so vivid, so real. The image of his angry face was burned into her mind. She couldn't take it anymore. The first thing she did the next morning was grab the plastic bag containing the dress. She drove straight to Olga's house, her hands gripping the steering wheel. When Olga answered the door, Aunt Lorna practically thrust the bag at her, explaining in a rushed, breathless voice that she couldn't finish the alteration. She told her everything: the feeling of being touched, the falling fabric, the figure in white, and the terrifying dream. Olga looked at the dress, then back at Aunt Lorna's pale, frightened face. She frowned, a look of frustrated recognition on her face. She sighed and shook her head, saying, "Wow, even in death, my uncle is still stingy." And so, the dress remained untouched, a testament to a man who, even from beyond the grave, refused to let go of what was his. Thanks for joining me for this spooky story. If you have any similar experiences, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more strange tales. See you next time.